Thank you very much. This morning's brought forth kind of a multitude of riches. There's all kinds of things we can talk about: assisted suicide, euthanasia, advanced directives. So I've decided to talk to you about advanced directives, but I hope that in the discussion period that follows we can range over those other issues. Everything is tempting in this area. But let me begin with advanced directives. We live in days of autonomy. Autonomy is just a fancy word for freedom. So we live in days where patient-centered care, family-centered care is the watchword. And in that kind of philosophy, what you try to do is to give patients what they want. Now, anybody who thinks that you should give patients what they want must have a soft spot for advanced directives. Because what advanced directives are designed to do is to project into a period of anticipated incapacity one's freedom. That is, you can now make choices after you are incapacitated because you made them before. And that's the advantage of advanced directives, and to some extent the whole idea behind them, to enhance one's autonomy. And if you like autonomy, you've got to like advanced directives. Now, many people draw the conclusion from this, two conclusions from this. First is that everyone should have an advanced directive. And the second is that you should always follow an advanced directive from a healthcare provider's point of view or from a family's point of view. But I don't think that either of those things is true. So I'm going a little bit against the stream here, but that's okay. And what I'd like to do is to spend the rest of my talk explaining why I don't think that those things are true. The first thing that I'd like to say here is the main difficulty with advanced directives is that they're almost always insufficiently informed. And it's useful to detail two ways in which they are insufficiently informed. The first way is that they may not accurately anticipate the circumstances in which they're activated. That is, you make out an advanced directive, and that you say, under these circumstances, I don't want that. And then the circumstances in which they're activated do not perhaps exactly match the description that is in the advanced directive. The second way in which instructional advanced directives are often insufficiently informed is that they may exactly match the circumstances in which they're activated, but that there may be some question as to whether the person has accurately evaluated what that person would want under those circumstances. One of the most common reasons for having an advanced directive is that you do not want life-sustaining treatment when you're demented. Well, you come to being demented. What do you know what it's like to be demented? You may have little peaks from time to time, but you may give every behavioral indication of rather enjoying life. Is it the case that you have misidentified what it is like to be demented? So those are the two reasons for worrying about advanced directives, because you make them out, they tie people's hands, they're insufficiently informed in those two ways. Should you always follow them? Is it a good deal to make one out? Those are the two questions I want to raise. I'll take them one by one. Now, on the first issue about advanced directives may not exactly match the circumstances in which they're activated, I'll begin with this short case that I had at Vancouver Hospital about a year ago. And this concerned a woman who was terminal. She was dying. She was awaiting her death. And she was at home. And she made an advanced directive which said, I want to die at home. Well, the doctor turned up when she had a crisis. And, of course, he didn't know about the advanced directive, as is often the case, and took her immediately to hospital. When she was in hospital, she had lost consciousness, and that she was not expected to survive, and certainly was not expected to regain consciousness. Somebody then found the advanced directive. Now the question came, do we take her home again? She says she wants to die at home. Well, two schools of thought broke out here, one and both quite vociferous. One school said she wants to die at home, better take her home again. Other schools said, hell, that's not what it meant. What it means is that she never wanted to come to hospital. Now that she's in hospital, the advanced directive has been violated. There's no point in taking her home again. That's not what she wanted. The point that I want to make here is that it's not easy to read. As if you just take the words literally, you'll take her home again. If you say, well, that's not her intention, then you're not going to take her home again. Another example just to make that point again. A woman had an advance directive, which is level 3 of intervention. She was in long-term care. And she wrote a little codicil to this, which said no surgery. So she then had abdominal pain, was taken to emergency, perfectly in accordance with her level 3 of advance directive, which says she wants transfer to acute care. And then the emergency room physician said, yes, this is a bowel obstruction, and the surgery will be easy and quick, and it will be a comfort measure. If she does not have the surgery, she may not die. If she does not have the surgery, she will have discomfort. We should be doing the surgery. So what you now have is an advance directive, which makes life more difficult in some ways for healthcare providers, and may not get the woman the health care that she actually would want. Who knows what she'd want in this circumstance? If she has level 3, presume she wants comfort care. She does not want a life extension if it requires some kind of surgery. But now she cannot have both life, comfort care and avoid life extension. So under those circumstances, do you do the surgery or do you not do the surgery? And the point that I would like to make here is that we would like to get patients the health care that they would like. We would really like to do that. That's a deep commitment. But we cannot guarantee that what people write down in their advance directives is what they would really want, because there's a mismatch often between the circumstances in which the directive is activated and what the person had in mind when they wrote it. No does not always mean no. If you have a babysitter and you say, under no circumstances do I want you to leave the apartment tonight, well, that's an instruction. Now the apartment catches fire. Do you mean that they got to sit in the apartment? Were they violent? No, you got to say, you got to interpret this little bit of sense, right? And that, of course, you're not supposed to leave the apartment, but you know if the apartment catches fire, that's okay. And similarly, if you have a long-term care and you've got a level 1 of intervention, comfort care only, and the person falls, breaks an arm, do you transfer to acute care? A person goes into uncontrollable seizures. A person has a cut which is unstitchable in the institution. Do you say, and I have seen it actually, where a physician has refused to transfer a person from a long-term care facility to acute care because they said comfort care only, which means no transfer to acute care. So you can't rely on people to have sense. Healthcare providers in particular. You can't rely on them to have sense. But you really got to interpret these things with some sense. Otherwise, it just guarantee that you're not going to get the people the health care that they want. Second thing, I now go to the second, that's my first conclusion. The second conclusion, or the second topic I'd like to talk about, is the topic of where a person misidentifies, misevaluates how they're going to like the circumstances. And here I come back just as my example, but there are lots of cases which are different from this, where a person says, if I should ever go into long-term care, and if I should ever become demented, and then I need life-sustaining treatment, please do not give that to me. And now the person goes into long-term care, becomes demented, and then gives every behavioral indication of rather enjoying life. What do you need to do under those circumstances? After all, you know, what does a person know about what it's like to be demented? May not be as bad as all that. Some stages may be kind of pleasant. I mean, daytime television's not as bad as people think. Don't go to work anymore. Somebody brings you your food. Want to go out in the sunshine, they'll wheel you out, give you a back rub. You know, may not be as bad as all that. I mean, I think some of the parts of dementia really are awful. On the other hand, not all parts are going to be awful. And that if it's going to be the case that you rather give every behavioral indication of enjoying life, and you now require a little bit of dialysis to get you over a short hump, do you give the dialysis or don't you? Well, maybe you would automatically do it. If you didn't have this advance directive, you would be giving that dialysis and getting back the person to what you regard and what that person seems to regard as an acceptable quality of life. But now you've got this damned advance directive which makes life difficult for you and may not get the person the kind of health care that they would ideally like to have. And you can put this in a more theoretical kind of way, because I'm a philosopher, I like to put it in this kind of way. And that is, you can take a life, and you can divide this life into various stages. So you have a first stage when you're an infant, and then you have a second stage when you're an adolescent, as Paul said, when you're a little bit miswired. Then you go into your first marriage, when you're a little bit better wired, but not fully wired. And then you go into your second marriage where you have children. And then you're fully wired, and then you become demented. So that's, now, if those are the various stages that you go through, you can also come to this and say, at each stage, you're a different person. Well, the same body, but psychic discontinuity. Bodily continuity, but psychic discontinuity. And you can often look back at a various stage of your life and say, was that me? I don't identify. How could I ever dress like that? How could I listen to that music? How could I ever regard those entertainments as, you know, you've got completely different goals, objectives, and aims, and so forth. And you can look back at being an adolescent. You can look back at your first marriage. You can look back at a whole host of things and say, is that really me? Now, the point that I would like to make here is that when you come to your second marriage, you then make an advance directive. And the advance directive that says, when I become demented, I do not want any life-sustaining treatment. You then become demented. But you give every behavioral indication of rather enjoying life. Why should you follow the advance directive? Because it was made by a different person. You've become a different person. The old person has disappeared. A new person has taken that person's place. Why should you listen to the person who existed at an earlier time? I mean, it's just like, if you want to put the point aggressively, say, here we have a patient, and that we want to know whether to have a life-sustaining treatment on this person. Let's go out on the street and find a stranger, the first person who's wearing a hat, and ask that person, what should we do with this person in the long-term care facility? Should they get life-sustaining treatment or not? You say, well, that's crazy. What's the point of asking a stranger? But if you're not going to ask a person on the street, why should you ask the person who used to inhabit this person's body? There's no more relationship between the stranger on the street and this person who is demented than the earlier person and this later person. So it's a nice problem of personal identity and the question of whose advance directive is that and why should it be binding in this circumstance? Anyway, those are the two problems that I have. And that's why I think that advance directives should not automatically be followed. Is it a good idea to have one? Well, I think it's an excellent idea if you've got some chronic condition, if you've got some experience with illness, if you have a certain kind of medical profile in front of you. I think it's an excellent idea if you've got special wishes, such as, for example, you're Jehovah's Witness and really do not want blood transfusions and so forth. Where I have difficulty is where you're basically healthy. If you're basically healthy, do you think your health care will be improved if you have an advance directive or if you don't have one? And I got to say, I don't have one. Not because I haven't thought about it. I've written model advance directives, but I've never filled it out. And my attitude is that I'm afraid to go to hospital without one because I may not get the health care that I want. But I'm also afraid to go to hospital with one because I may not get the health care that I want. Thank you very much.